Hi, this is Comet Troy coming to you from Linden Camp, a small boutique RV park I'm building 5 minutes southeast of Linden, Tennessee. I just released a 4-part video series on underground trenching for an RV park. Part 1 was, doing some trenching. Part 2 was building the meter base. Step 3 was the RV, conduit to the RV sites. And then 4th was finally the electric company come in and energize and everything. Even though I released those videos in that order, that's really not the order that things happen in reality. And, that was kind of the first lesson I learned here is, we did the underground primary trenching first, and then second was the meter base, so that's consistent. But then the electric company came in third to energize the meter base and the first RV site that we had trenched. And that all went fine. The problem came when we went to run the additional RV sites to the existing meter base that was already energized and powered up. We tried to, trench to the meter base, and, with all the conduit in the ground, and there was a some ground wires down there. We ended up doing some damage. We hit the ground wire with the ditch witch and hit some of the unistrut with the excavator we rented. And, it was just kind of a pain in the butt. And the other thing that was kind of hard after you trench and then put the meter base in was, augering for the holes. The auger bit wants to move around. So this time, for my second meter base, I did things a little bit differently here. So this is the second location here for the power panel. And I did first of all, I dug a big hole here where everything was going to come in and terminate. So, and you'll notice that there's no poles or no power panel here yet. But all the conduit comes in here, to all my RV stations, and none of this is backfilled. So it has quite a bit of flexibility to move the conduit where they need it to go. It seems awfully flexible, but well, I guess it is what it is. So doing it the second time, I'm doing it smarter. Dug all this out and brought in all the conduit, and I didn't cut it to length, so here's one that ends here where they can just glue some more conduit on to bring this over to the meter base and all that. And then so that's kind of step 1, was doing all the trenching first. And the primary trench is already here, or the primary wire. And then step 2 will be to come in here and put the post in. So now instead of the auger having to drill down 4 feet, it only has to go down a foot or 2 from the bottom of this hole that I dug. And then they can build the meter base on top of that, and put the base, and then finally do all the RV sites at the same time. And then finally have MLEC come in at the end to energize everything all at once. So that's how we're doing things differently this time. The other lesson I learned is when it comes to the ditch witch. I love the ditch witch, and I think it's a great tool to do trenching. However, it didn't work well in my case because of all the rock I have out here, and it just doesn't do well with rock. And the other thing I didn't like about the ditch witch was, it's a 6-inch wide trench, and if you're not going to be sticking wire down in it right away, dirt's going to fall in. You're going to get rain's going to wash into there, or wash dirt into there. And I probably won't do the ditch witch method again. especially now that I've used an excavator, and the excavator is so much easier. And I like the ability to be able to stand down in the trench. The narrowest bucket on the excavator I rented was a 1 foot bucket, and that's big enough to stand in there almost sideways. So that would be another lesson I learned from this experience, is excavator all the way, ditch witch not, with the caveat that if I didn't have all this rock out here, the ditch witch would be a more viable alternative. And if you were going to bury the wire right away, after you're doing the trench, you put the wire in right away before dirt and stuff can fall in there. That would be another pro of for doing a ditch witch, and it's cheaper to rent, obviously. The other thing I can say about the ditch witch too is, I was using it to bury circuit conduit, which has to be minimum 24 inches here in Tennessee. And we were going deeper. We were going 30 inches. So, if you were going to be doing like 12 inches for a cable TV line or something like that, hell yeah, ditch witch all the way. You could rip through this stuff pretty quick and get the line down. And it all comes down to using the right tool for the job. So that would be, I guess, what I would consider a lesson learned as well. The next lesson learned was these RV stations. So my dad was here, and I had him build the structure. Actually, I had a contractor come out and set the posts down with a post hole auger. And then after they put the posts in, then I had my dad, run the boards across. I had my dad mount the RV disconnect on there. And I thought, my thought process was that would give us a target to trench to, so we know exactly, where to trench to in that. The problem is trenching underneath this stuff with an excavator. It was kind of like the game of Operation when you were a kid. You had to be really, really careful, trying to get underneath these boards to to dig underneath them. There was a couple times where, it's just like, it's a little touch of the joystick, and all of a sudden, I would pop off the RV station, or, it would come up an inch and, pull the post out of the ground. And it was just very difficult to, to dig underneath these structures after they were installed. Putting the posts in was fine. So what we ended up doing was disassembling everything my dad did. So we took the electrical boxes off, took the boards off, and had more open space, left the poles in, and that actually worked out really well. So that was one of the lessons learned, is, don't have too much stuff in the way when you're going to be using an excavator. You can do it, but it requires a lot more precision. It's a lot more tedious work, careful work, and it takes a lot longer to do it that way. So yeah, it's good to have a target for the trenching, but you don't want too much stuff in the way. Another lesson learned was gluing the conduit together. I attempted to do some of that in, it wasn't like a downpour rain, but, kind of misting out, and, I had a deadline to get to, so I'm out there, in a wet condition, I guess, and, the conduit ends were wet, and, you try to spread the glue on there, and it just wasn't sticking. It would all glob up, and that was a lesson learned. I mean, it was something I thought I could get done in a little bit wetter conditions, but that didn't really work out very well either. So glue your conduit together when it's sunny and dry. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that anyway? Another lesson learned was when we were trenching with the excavator, or even the ditch witch, you know, where do you put your piles of dirt? So a lot of times when you're in your close quarters with trees, you don't really have too many options of where to, you know, where to dump the bucket. So, you know, we ended up dumping some of the dirt here in the trees and that. So, I mean, if you have to do it, you have to do it, but you know, it makes backfilling a lot more difficult. So the lesson learned here is, you know, when you're doing your trenching and you're deciding where to dump your bucket, think ahead to having the backfill and get to that dirt. You know, you kind of think, well, if I can dump it there, I can just scoop it up there. Well, it's a lot easier to dump dirt than it is to scoop it up. So the lesson learned there is to have your dirt piles more out in the open where you can ideally push them in to cover up your ditches, as opposed to trying to scoop dirt out between trees like we did here. So I'm going to have to, you know, get a hand shovel and hand shovel some of that stuff to, you know, to make that look nice. Just haven't gotten to it yet. Low priority. Another lesson learned is the pull rope. So the electric company requires a 1/4-inch nylon pull rope installed in a 3-inch service conduit. And I watched my contractor do that, and they were feeding the pull rope through each piece as they were gluing it together. They had a wrench or some sort of a heavy weight on one end. They just pop it through, you know, glue it, pop it through the next one. And although that, you know, that works fairly well, I think a better method is to glue all the conduit together. Well, and I actually carry that forward into the 2-inch that we did too. Not really required by anybody, but I just thought it was a good idea to do. So we were feeding this pull rope wire through all the conduit, the 2-inch. And one of the lessons I learned from watching another electrician do their conduit is they glue all the conduit together, put it in the ditch, and then when the conduit's all installed, they use a vacuum cleaner. You know, they use a vacuum cleaner, or a shop vac, I guess would be more the appropriate thing. They put the shop vac on one end, sucking through the conduit, and then they feed the rope into the other end. And you have to make some sort of a wad, you know, whether you use a grocery bag or a tennis ball or a golf ball or something. You know, you need to have something that kind of closes up the conduit space, and also you got to be able to account for elbows. And a lot of people don't know this, but you know, schedule 80 and schedule 40 have the same outside diameter, so they can connect together, but the inside diameter is different. Schedule 80 has a smaller diameter on the inside. So if you're going to make a wad to use the vacuum cleaner method, you're going to want to make sure that wad goes through a piece of schedule 80 if you have schedule 80 in the ground. I haven't done that yet. That was a lesson I learned. So the second phase of conduit I didn't run any pull ropes through the 2-inch. I did do the wrench method for the 3-inch I laid back there. But I don't know. Next time I don't think I'm going to run any pull ropes. I'm going to install them after the conduit is installed and laid. So that's another lesson learned. The next lesson learned is leaving your ditches open. Now, I'm not saying, you know, the entire ditch once it passes inspection. There's also liability concerns too. So, you know, you don't want to leave ditches open and have someone, you know, trip and fall into them, break a leg, break an arm, or whatnot. However, you know, you really need to weigh out the risk of leaving the trenches open where you're going to cross something else over the top of it. So if you have electrical in the ground and you're going to be running water, not on top of it, but across it, you know, I like to leave that portion of that ditch open. So I can see where the 3-inch is, or the 2-inch, or whatever, a gas line or whatnot. I like to leave the ditches open where those crosses are gonna occur. And I learned that kind of the hard way. There's a couple spots where I was digging and my bucket was deeper than I thought it was, or the conduit wasn't as deep as I thought it was, and ended up busting up some conduit and having to repair it. The cool thing about conduit is it's plastic, PVC. It's pretty easy to work with. It's pretty easy to repair, but it's just unnecessary rework that didn't have to be done. So carefully think where things are going to cross and where everything's going to go. Now here at Linden Camp, we're doing everything in the front 5 acres at once. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. It's unrealistic to do everything at once. You just don't have enough open space to pile dirt everywhere and then have your equipment. So you kind of got to do, things in phases. And that takes me to the next lesson learned, is look at what has to be buried the deepest and do that first. Here in Linden, Tennessee, the deepest thing you need to bury is the 3-inch primary wire, the 14,400 volts. That has to be 36 inches down at least. So definitely want to do that first. Service lines and circuits, 2-inch or 3-inch service line, I believe, according to the spec, has to be 2 feet down. We did all of ours 3 feet here anyway for the service, the 240 volt service wire. The branch circuits, the 2-inch going to the RV sites, that's 2 feet. So you want to do all of that stuff first, and then water, gas, communication lines, whatnot, are at at a shallower depth. So I did those next. Also the 1-inch conduit for lighting and stuff, here in Tennessee, that has to be a minimum of 18 inches deep. So that kind of falls in line with the depth of the water and the gas. I'm not exactly sure how deep the water's supposed to be here in Tennessee. I've heard some conflicting information. Nothing less than 12 inches, so at least 12 inches for water. I did most of my water 2 feet because I'm from Wisconsin and I didn't want anything freezing, so I like to err on the side of caution than to have problems. So pretty much everything that I've done here at Linden Camp trenching is a minimum of 24 inches. So that's what I recommend. So that was the next lesson learned. The next lesson learned, this isn't really a lesson learned because this is something that I had planned to do from the start, is I wanted to get all my trenching, all my infrastructure, everything I would ever need laid in the first 5 acres from here to the road. And everything, all my infrastructure, all my utilities, my gas, my water, my computer communication, my primary lines, fiber lines, all of that, comes back beyond that first 5 acres. And it all terminates in here. And the reason why I did that is once, we're open for reels here and have, paying reservations and guests, staying at our sites up here, I didn't want to have to disturb them, to do the next phase. I have, another ridge that goes back 1,000 feet this way, and then another ridge that goes 1,500 feet back that way. So if the RV park and all that, works out, you know, which I'm not even sure it's going to. I mean, I think it will. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. You know, but once, you know, this is up and there's some, you know, some cash flow happening and some income coming in, you know, then I can, you know, build on, tack on to this infrastructure and continue it back. So not really a lesson learned. It's, you know, kind of common sense thinking that I did from the beginning. So once this is, this trenching is done in this first 5 acres, you know, that should be it for trenching up here ever again. Never say never though, right? All right, the next lesson learned is grading and making your driveways. So last April, you know, a year ago, I had, you know, my driveways installed here. I had the trees cleared, and I had a new driveway put in over there, and these are my pull-through RV sites. And I had the contractor come in and laser level these RV pads. Well, that was kind of a waste of time and money. And I'm not sure if you can really see it now, but, you know, all these RV pads that were laser leveled have been trenched through, dirt piled on, and they're a mess. So that was really kind of a waste. And also the driveway surface goes along with that. You know, the contractor had, you know, these, and you may see it in some of the earlier videos, had a nice white chert surface on, you know, on my entire driveway. It looked beautiful from the sky. You know, this was my turnaround area. You know, it was a nice white chert surface, and well, you can see it now. It doesn't look that way anymore. So, highly recommend not worrying about, you know, your driveway surface until your trenching is done. And not only that, but, you know, after the trenching is done and filled in, those ditches are going to settle. So, you know, after being driven on and rain, you know, you're going to end up getting, you know, 2, 3, 4 inches of settling going on there. So highly recommend waiting to do any finished type of driveway surface until after the trenching has all been completed and you waited a while for things to settle. Now out here in Tennessee, I mean, you got to bring in something to drive on. You know, you won't get trucks in here, you won't get your vehicle in here, your RV in here, unless you put down some sort of driveway surface. So I'm not saying don't put any driveway surface down, just don't go all out until the trenching's done. You know, put down enough to be able to get in and out of your lot. So that is a pretty good lesson learned there. So another lesson learned was, you know, you start digging these trenches, and, you know, a 1-foot trench doesn't sound, you know, very hard to jump over, you know, but then also it becomes 1.5 feet wide, 2 feet wide after a couple rains, and it, you know, becomes quite a challenge and dangerous to, you know, be done jumping over all these trenches. So we went out and, you know, bought some 2x12s. You can see one laying here on the ground. We bought 2 of them. So we laid these across the trenches so we can maneuver around on foot. You know, you're carrying wire, you're carrying conduit. Last thing you want to be doing is jumping over a trench with that stuff in your arms and break a leg or something. So highly recommend, you know, building some temporary bridges across the trenches for you to walk across. Next lesson learned would be plan for the future. So here I have a transformer base that was installed very early on in the project, and it has primary wire coming into it from the road, you know, up that way, and then it has primary wire continuing on, you know, to the back of the property that way, and then it has a service line buried that goes from this transformer base over to our second power panel over here. So everything is fine and great, right? Well, I learned, and this is where the lesson learned comes in, is that I could have more than one service on a transformer, and then you can CT them, they call it, so you can do 1 meter, you know, to save some money on accounts. So I had this idea after the thought that, you know, I might want to build a garage back in here someday for some of the equipment I'm buying, and more of a machine shed, pole barn. So lucky me, the transformer hasn't been set on here yet. So I decided to bring the excavator up. I had the excavator facing this way with the transformer base in between it. You know, I was a good 6 inches away from the transformer base with the left track, and I was digging out there. So I wanted to add a second service capability for my future pole barn machine shed, right? And it was wet conditions again, and this ground here slopes down, and I was digging and everything was fine, but as soon as I hit some hard chert rock, the bucket grabbed, and instead of the bucket coming towards me, the excavator slid down towards the bucket, and the left track of the excavator hit the side of the transformer base here, and I thought it was initially just a hole there at the top, but after I dug down, it actually split the transformer base. So another what I call oopsies. It's about oopsie number 7 so far. But you know, it's just stuff. It can all be repaired. So I have a new transformer base over there to go in. I'm gonna have to you know, get the Mini X back here, dig up this meter base, which will make adding that service for the pole barn or the, you know, the machine shed easier, you know, once that meter base is out. Originally I was just going to, you know, dig on that side and then hand dig into and underneath the transformer base, you know, to add that second service conduit, you know, for the future. But now that I kind of messed up the transformer base, we're going to plan B, which was my original plan A, and then that became my plan A to do the trenching underneath it. So now my original plan A is now back to my plan A again. So the lesson learned there is, you know, think about the future. If you have space where you might put another building, put in another service into your transformer base that you can tack onto later. If you don't use it, you don't use it. You know, well, I guess I really shouldn't talk about it this way, but I was going to say a little piece of conduit coming out of there, stubbing out, isn't that much money, but you know, schedule 80 and today's price of 3 inches, about $100, and the schedule 40 is, I don't know, $70, $80, something in that range. Fortunately, prices are starting to come down. So by the time you're watching this video, hopefully they're not that expensive anymore. But that would be the lesson learned there. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you in the next video.